Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken, and today I'm joined by a man who spent 5 years of his career at Birmingham City, making 201 appearances, scoring 41 goals, a two-time promotion winner, and of course a 2011 Carling Cup winner. Cameron Jerome, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No trouble at all. We'll get through the nitty-gritty of your Birmingham City career over the course of the next 25, 30 minutes. But firstly, you retired last year. What have you been doing to fill your time in that time?
Spending more time at home with the kids and the wife, and this, I took a little bit of time out of the game when I first retired. Obviously, you know, I haven't played for so many years. I don't think you quite realise how much you just miss simple things in life. So just little things as doing a school run, kids' activities out of school and things like that. So I took a little bit of time just to relax and de-stress, so to speak. And then after that, I started on a little bit of a venture what I'm currently on. So just working with strikers, helping strikers sort of improve their performance through data analytics, video analysis, and through technical finishing sessions.
It's interesting because coaching can be so specific now, can't it? Obviously, you always have the goalkeeping coach, but there are so many technical coaches in backroom teams. That's something you wanted to get into, or is it kind of a consultancy basis that you want to do it on?
I guess it's sort of something I morphed into at the back end of my career in terms of where the idea actually came from. I felt like the last 2-3 years of my career at Luton and Bolton are sort of morphed into all of what I'm doing in one, as well as playing. So you were sort of the older sort of experienced pro around the changing rooms. What a manager could sort of rely on to police everything, not in an authority way, but where, through your experience and what you've done in the game, people was always going to look up to you, and, you're a leader naturally anyway. So I think from that perspective, just mentoring people and just having them little 5-10 minute chats with people, especially some of the younger players, it can have such a big impact on them. And it just obviously keeps away all the nonsense from the manager, where you can, sort of sense the mood and the sort of balance of the dressing room, and then make sure things are right and running smoothly. And then for the manager, from his perspective, he's just on the training pitch and not having to worry about the rest of the things. So that's sort of something what I naturally came full cycle in terms of from when I was a young player. I always had players like that at the back end of their career, sort of helping me and the younger players of changing rooms I was in, coming through the system. So I thought that was something naturally that I guess it comes full cycle in terms of you feel obliged to sort of do that anyway. And in terms of the other things I was doing, it just sort of developed through interest, really, through the game sort of growing into data analytics, and more things are sort of prominent and used in the game in terms of data, analysing, whether it's opposition and stuff like that. Obviously, being a forward, I was always asked my opinion on defences and forward players of certain teams and stuff like that. So it's something what I sort of gathered a little bit of an interest in and just sort of went with it, sort of thing. So, like you said, there's so many different aspects to a technical coaching staff, and I do it as a consultancy basis, but it's fascinating. Football's just evolving constantly, and it's it's an amazing spectacle for the neutral now.
I'm going to transport you back to when you were a young player back in 2006. You just enjoyed a 20-goal season for Cardiff City after coming through there, and then Birmingham City signed you. What was that summer like for you, and talk to me through the interest, how it all came about and how the move went through?
Yeah, obviously, I was actually speaking to my son about it the other day. He was talking about my career, because he just randomly asked. He's never really asked the whole part of my career. So I was explaining sort of the journey, and, especially that first early intro into moving from Cardiff to Birmingham. The interest sort of came around, I think, in January, but it didn't materialise for whatever reason. And then it followed through into the summer. And, I think I was on holiday when I had a call off my agent saying, the deal to Birmingham's done. So I was like, okay, that's sort of interesting. And then, pretty much just subject to a medical when you get back off holiday. And that was it. I didn't really think anything of it. I suppose when you're a young player coming through, football just takes care of itself. You're not thinking about the nitty-gritty bits of anything else. And that was a similar case to me when I was coming through. And obviously going to Birmingham at such a young age for that sort of money and sort of the pressure of being the main player, it was almost chalk and cheese to what it was like at Cardiff. I was, probably in the team to start with at Cardiff by default in terms of the injuries and the financial problems the club had. And then obviously I earned my place in the team through my performance. And then obviously moving to Birmingham, where all of a sudden there's 5 or 6 strikers and you're one of 6 or 5 and not one of 1 or one of 2. And that sort of challenge is a challenge in itself to a 19-year-old kid. But yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, my memories of that obviously was a promotion to the Premier League, and that was the ultimate aim and ultimate dream of myself. It was to sort of pitch myself at the highest level possible, and it doesn't get any higher in the Premier League. So that was a fabulous achievement from us getting back there, especially with the squad, how it was ripped up from relegation. A lot of ins and outs, and I thought the club did a fantastic job in terms of, looking back at it now, they sort of went out with the old and in with the new in terms of freshening it up with the young blood, what they got through, the likes of myself, Fabrice Mwamba, Sebastian Larsson, Nicholas Bentner, Gary McSheffley, Nia Dans. So, we had a core group of younger players. And it was an absolutely amazing experience and an amazing changing room to be a part of.
So you brought it up a little bit yourself there, but you were always part of really strong striking quartets at Blues even when you first came to when you were in your final season in the Premier League. There always seemed to be 3 or 4 really good strikers there. Early on, you'd have been part of a strike force that included Andy Cole and Mikel Forsell, weren't you? What are your memories of playing with those guys and obviously learning from those guys?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was brought in, and the club already, there was DJ Campbell, who had done well in the Premier League at the time. Gary McSheffley was sort of a forward at Coventry, scored a lot of goals. We had Nicholas Bentner, who come from Arsenal with a big reputation. So yeah, it was good. It was a learning curve in terms of that. Obviously, Mikel was brilliant when you could get him on the pitch, but that wasn't always the case. But he had something what I've never ever seen still to this day in terms of his feet and his finishing ability. Is absolutely incredible to see. And obviously, we brought in Andy Cole towards the later end of that season, just to get us over the finishing line. And that was amazing to have someone like that who'd been there and done that at such a high level, just to sort of have that calming influence on the squad. And just the intricate conversations you can sit down and have with him. He was such a gentleman, and he was someone, every sort of the young player, especially forwards, looked up to in that era, that early Premier League era. And, for the career he had, it was an amazing sort of experience to have his insight and mindset on things. So, he was someone who I definitely, I picked his brains, on more than one occasion on a load of different subjects, really.
Any standout moments in that season? Looking through, there was some important goals against Crystal Palace, Wolves and Sheffield Wednesday towards the end. Yeah,
I mean, I always get stick for it. I was with Matt Murray on Thursday. We was watching a game together on Thursday, and he always says it to me. Remember that time when you put it through my legs at Molineux in the 89th minute? I said, yeah, because I need to give him a little bit of banter after. I said, close them legs, mate. But he always brings it up, and it's quite a little funny thing. But we was talking about that sort of era again, just going back to that. But that 3-2 win away at Wolves was an important one. And, like you say, away at QPR, I think on a Tuesday night, my first goal for Blues, was struggling at that point in terms of we couldn't quite get the consistency going. We're not quite gelled as a team together yet, but just goals like that where it means something to the team. It just gives you that momentum to be able to then go on another 4 or 5 game run. It's just a springboard to getting that momentum going, which is key for promotion really in the Championship.
Strikers can always remember the goals and always talk about them that they scored yesterday. It's brilliant.
Honestly, we'll be here all day, honestly.
There was another promotion, 08-09 under Alex McLeish. 9 league goals you got in that one. Some big winners as well. Big winner at Watford towards the end of the season, 1-0, I think. What are your memories from that season, and how does that compare to the other one?
The first one for me was probably harder because there's a transition period, like I mentioned earlier, about the out of the old guard and in with the new. And not in the old guard in a detrimental respect, in terms of there's a lot of freshening up to do at the football clubs in terms of players left and went on to bigger things and remained in the Premier League. So we was almost buying and recruiting a lot of unknown quantities at that time. Even in January, we went and signed Rowan Vine from QPR and from Luton and things like that. So we had a lot of players who had not long played at that level, in all due respect. So, but it was at the right age bracket. But yeah, that was sort of a more challenging one for me looking back at it. The one with Alex in 08-09 was an expectancy because we'd been in the Premier League. We'd signed Marcus Bent, we'd signed Kevin Phillips, we'd signed Stephen Carr, we'd signed Stephen Carr, who came in out of retirement to come and play for us. Then, obviously Lee Carsley, people like that. So it was like Frank Kudru, we sort of signed seasoned pros then at that point where we went with experience. So it was kind of a different blend of what the first promotion was about. This was about guys who know how to get over the line. This is about getting over the line and getting back to where we need to get back to. And, we did that in terms of securing promotion, albeit being a different way of going around it.
Yeah, though you've worked under two very, very experienced managers in those seasons, Steve Bruce in the first and Alex McLeish in the second. How did those two managers compare? How are they different and similar?
In terms of their methodology and what they believed in, quite a pragmatic approach, I think there was both different. Both the same as people and managers. There was different. Whereas Steve Bruce is more like trying to create a fun environment, if that makes sense. Always laughing and joking. Always being light-hearted, wanting to be involved in, even involved in the rondos and the five-a-side, and still want to get involved and have a bit of banter and just try and create that harmony between the squad. Alex was, brilliant man manager as well, by all means, but I think he was sort of different. He was quite a tactician where he took a lot of the tactical side of things. He was more of a deeper thinker tactically than Steve for me. But yeah, two different approaches, but two very good man managers. I thought that the way they left the group to sort of self-police themselves was quite interesting, really, and especially with Alex, where he had their experienced heads in there. Kevin Phillips has many times been promoted to the Premier League, mainstay in the Premier League for years. Lee Carsley, mainstay at Everton. Stephen Carr, captain at Newcastle and Republic of Ireland. Marcus Bent, people like that, where it was just like the younger players we had in that squad could just soak up all that off those sort of guys, and they just sort of dragged us with them, really.
Yeah, obviously got promoted. First season back in the Premier League, the 09-10 season. You scored 10 Premier League goals, including that belter at Liverpool. I guess you remember that one well as well. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I get asked about it constantly. 11 Premier League goals. I got a goal taken off me for Burnley in the last day of the season, but they give it me back. They give me back about 3 years later. I'm just like, it's no good, is it? But it was 11 Premier League goals, to correct you. But
thank you.
Yeah, the Anfield one. Yeah, I remember that because it's one that gets talked about ever so often. But yeah, I mean, you look back at some of the goals, and strikers, we're not really fussy in terms of how the ball goes in the net. But to score a goal like that, obviously, it's something that you'll always forever remember.
Where does that particular season rank among your best, do you think?
For Blues, I'd say definitely the best. I feel like we had the players that season in terms of what we had inside our team to go and do really well, and it's no coincidence we finished 9th. And I talk about it now, past, present, and football present. Every time we were sort of promoted at Blues, we never spent any money. Just imagine Leeds United. Leeds have just spent 120 million quid now. South Sunderland 140. Forest spent 150 when their face come up. We probably spent 5 million quid on Craig Gardner from Villa. You know what I mean? Like that sort of mindset of just survive. So it's difficult. You're playing with a pragmatic manager who plays 4-5-1, and you're just trying to survive in the Premier League. It's not an easy feat, and people have got, sort of criticised the team or the ownership at the time, and the ownership probably, they've got to take account for that sort of thing, because ultimately you're handicapped from the start, really, when you're not spending money. And look, let's be honest, the money's only gradually gone up in terms of what you actually get for getting to the Premier League. It was still 150 million quid then. All right, they reckon it's 200 million now, but back then it was still 150 million quid. It wasn't like he was getting 10 million then and 200 now. It was still you were still getting a fortune to get there. So it was quite hard in the respect in terms of the team being able to compete, and from a manager's perspective, being able to equip a squad together to compete and stay in the division. So you sort of look at this era of football and go, bloody hell, I wish I was playing now with all these brilliant wingers and brilliant number 10s and this free-flowing football where you're playing 3 strikers, 2 strikers up front. You're playing one up front with 5 midfielders across a midfield block. You know what I mean? Who are very similar profile players, but nice, like you say, it's football changes with the times and stuff like that. So, but from that respect, I felt like we overachieved in terms of what we actually had and how we actually played. But nonetheless, it's still a fantastic achievement, and I think that's probably been Blues' biggest league finish for some time.
I was going to say, before we go on to the 10-11 season, which is obviously a real kind of can of worms once we open it, you mentioned there about not signing the players when you've got up or not spending enough money. Is that kind of do you feel like as a squad you sold short by those owners at that time?
1,000,000%.
Investment didn't come.
1,000,000%. You look, every ownership group as its own model, and how they run the football club is their prerogative. They're the owner of the football club. You're an employee, you're a player, you just get on with it. But you can't help but look back and go, well, even at the time, you're probably thinking, Jesus, any more signings coming? You're looking at it and you're thinking, you recruit for the Championship, right? That you get promoted, so then all of a sudden you've got to recruit for the Premier League because you're in a different league, you're in a different, stratosphere almost. So you can't take every single player. You can have a few of the players from the Championship up, but you can't have every single core member of your squad from the Championship because ultimately that's not your level. You know what I mean? Your level is the level you've been at, sort of thing. So you hear sort of managers alluding to it nowadays where, I was listening to Russell Martin on Monday Night Football, and Russell's a good friend of mine, and we're speaking about the Southampton, the task at his what he had at his hands at Southampton in terms of they recruited for the Championship, but then all of a sudden the Premier League's another beast. So athletically, physically, people are better. Technically, they're better. Tactically, they're better. That's why they're Premier League players ultimately. So that's where I feel like newly promoted sides fall short. Like Leicester, for example, Leicester for me are going to be a yo-yo team for the next 5 or 6 years until they really either have a big reset and go again, or just somehow miraculously stay up, because it's just the gulf in class it's just evidently getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was the same when we was growing up as well. And I feel like, at times we were probably let down. I feel like the managers was let down because ultimately, if you've given a budget of one of the lowest in the league, how are you supposed to survive and even compete, really?
Yeah, I was just to pick up your point on the Premier League and the physicality of it. I couldn't believe the Arsenal Man City game and the sheer size of the players these days. Like you've got, 10 years ago, it would have been all about tiki taka and smaller players, and now all of a sudden we're in the age of, beasts, but also technically superb players as well.
Yeah, like I say, football evolves every 4 or 5 years, and I think it's evolved back now to like a little bit like how it was when I was sort of playing in the Premier League, where people are talking about long throws all again. Everyone's doing long throws. Everyone from a kickoff's pinging it in the corner flag and going, well, we'll just get territory now. So it's quite fascinating to see. I was listening to an Arsenal fan was like, you must have been moaning on the radio talking about we've spent £1 billion and we look like Stoke. I just had to chuckle. I was just like, yeah, and you guys used to hate coming to Stoke, and you was the guys who was trying to get this long throws, taken off us when we was at Stoke. But yeah, it's just funny how football evolves and it comes full cycle almost. But yeah, like you say, to your point about the physicality, it's another level in terms of the athleticism and the physicality, but also like the technical aspect to it. It's incredible.
Yeah, obviously we'll start with the Carling Cup win, obviously, because that's the happier part of that particular season. An incredible triumph for Blues at Wembley in the end. Talk to me about your memories going through the rounds before you got to the final.
To be honest with you, I thought we had a really good, in terms of a cup run. It was enjoyable because we was playing against teams what was evenly matched, if that makes sense. It wasn't like the easiest. We didn't have like an easy cup run. We had like West Ham in the semis. We had Villa in the quarters. I can't remember who had in the fourth round, but we had some difficult ties to navigate through. So I think once we got past it, I don't think I played in the first couple of rounds, and then once we got past that, then I think the manager was like, hang on a minute, we've got a little bit of a sniffy. I think some of the big teams had been knocked out. Obviously Arsenal was still in there, maybe someone else, but I think there was quite a few early shots with like Chelsea and United. Maybe they'd have gone out early, so I think every sort of team in there would have gone, a bit of luck here, we can maybe get to the final sort of thing, because that's all you're hoping for really as a club of that stature. Not to obviously you think you can win it, but do you believe you can win it? Not really, but you just in the hope that you're in the hunt to win it, if that makes sense. And I think as we got deeper into the competition, the belief sort of came, and the quarterfinal win over Villa at home was like, amazing night under the lights at St Andrews, and then obviously West Ham, who there's a good side in their in their respects, and probably a top 10 side, probably equipping himself at a higher level than what we were at that time. There was probably operating just a little bit higher than what we were, but nevertheless, you fancy yourself over a two-legged game, and obviously we had a good result in the first leg, and then it was started really bad at St Andrews. I think Carlton Cole scored after about 2 minutes, and you're thinking, oh God, chance wasted. But true Blues spirit, and the fans got behind us, and the boys dug in, and it was an amazing achievement just to get to that final. And obviously winning it when we got there was like, we had nothing to lose in that respect. Alex had a game plan and a master plan up his sleeve, and he really put a lot of detail in terms of the tactical work around that final, specifically for that game. And people put their bodies and their limbs on the line. People was carrying injuries. People got injured in the final, and I think that sort of derailed our season. Even though it was so successful and such a huge moment in the club's history, it would have just been a carrot on top if we would have just been able to stay in the league. But unfortunate for us, we couldn't survive. But in saying that, for me personally, looking back at it, I think a lot of Blues fans might agree with me here. I'd rather win a piece of silverware and then get relegated than playing in the Premier League, finishing, being a yo-yo club, going up, down, up, down, up, down, not really having any major investment, or the fans getting a major trophy. I'd rather a major trophy personally. As a player, you've won something in your career which no one can ever take away from you. And as a football club, in terms of Birmingham, they're not used to winning trophies year in, year out like your Man United. So, it's a fantastic, bit of history for the supporters as well.
Yeah, the game's about winning, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Of course.
Were you disappointed not to start the final, because you'd obviously played the full 90 in the previous two games? You started the West Ham game, started the Villa games. Were you disappointed not to?
100%. I think I took a niggle in the cup the week before. We played Sheffield Wednesday, I think it was, at home, and I rolled my ankle. But Alex said I wasn't going to start anyway, so I was carrying a little bit of a niggle, and he said, "Look, I'm not going to start because I've got a plan what I'm working on. We're going to go aerially with Zigic. I feel like there's a real weak point in the Arsenal back line there. I think it was Koscielny and Vermaelen, maybe the two centre halves. It wasn't the tallest, probably 6 foot, 6'1", and obviously Ziggy was 6'7", so he was a big old guy, wasn't he? And he told me on the Monday, to be fair, so I had a little bit of time to process it, and I thought, well, what it is, you've got a plan. It's part of the squad. That was just my mindset as a player anyway. I got over the disappointment after a couple of days, and then just thought, the bigger picture's something we're working on, and obviously on the day we managed to execute that, and I felt like obviously Ziggy got the first goal, and then he was causing a lot of problems in terms of his aerial ability, winning his fouls, getting us up the pitch, and sort of disrupting Arsenal from getting into a little bit of a flow. We stopped them from playing their game really, and it was honestly, we still speak about it, some of the ex-players, when we see each other and stuff like that, and it's just one of them things where, like I say, no one will ever take that away from you as an ex-player. Now looking back at it, it's something what you can be immensely proud of.
What were the celebrations like? There must have been some party after that.
Oh yeah, there's a few parties after that, let me tell you. For a few days, I think we had a few days where the gaffer gave us I think we needed it anyway. It just took a lot out of us mentally and emotionally, just obviously winning it, and then a few walking wounded, like I said, going into that, and then a few people picking up injuries coming out of it as well. So we had quite a few days off, and probably no surprise we went on that a bit of a losing run after that. But it was certainly a good little bit of a celebration after.
On the relegation, obviously you mentioned the lack of investment from the owners. And we talk about it. Some people look at the injuries to key players that season. Scott Dann missed a good chunk of it. What would you put it down to? Do you think the relegation? Where did it all stem from?
I think, for me personally, I feel like there's a couple of things in that season where that partnership got broken up between Scott Dann and Roger Johnson. That partnership was formidable. No one would probably look at these two guys and say they're the best two defenders in the Premier League or to grace the Premier League, but the partnership and understanding they had, but their willingness to put their bodies on the line, something you've never seen, or something I haven't certainly seen from a partnership for a long, long time. There's old school defending, real big, strong, physical defenders, which would, people found it tough to play against. That was a big thing, and I think the signings what came in didn't help. We took David Bentley on loan. We took Alexander Kleb from Barcelona on loan, but guys who came who did nothing. So it's almost a waste of a signing sort of thing. It was bodies through the door, but it wasn't anybody that was contributing in that respect. But look, there's a number of factors, and ultimately, at the end of the day, you've got to win football matches to be successful, and we didn't win enough games. It's as simple as that. You can sort of try and make excuses around certain points, but ultimately, it's about winning games. And we went into a little bit of a negative period after that cup final, and we just couldn't ever recover and get in the momentum. And we had a couple of games where we should have won and we didn't, and that sort of thing. But it's shoulda, coulda, woulda. But yeah, it was bitterly disappointing, because obviously we'd finished ninth the year before, and we was, we're obviously really proud and thought we'd be able to kick on and sort of consolidate in that sort of bracket of level of the Premier League for another couple of years with the players we actually had. But it wasn't to be.
Yeah, so relegation happened, and obviously kind of with so many Premier League players, you expect kind of a natural breakup, don't you, where players leave. The McLeish thing probably caught a few people off guard inside the dressing room and inside the team at that point when McLeish obviously left. What was the feeling around it? How was that particular news received?
It was interesting because obviously, I mean, as a player, everyone's angling to get out, aren't they? Let's be honest. Let's not beat around the bush. As a player, you're going, right, been playing in the Premier League the last few years. That's where you think like you deserve to be or want to be. So everyone's sort of engineering for moves, and you see everyone getting moves, and you're thinking, well, I think I'd ruptured my plantar fascia the last stage of the season, a couple of games, and I had to sort of like, we didn't get the operation done because obviously we was going through a relegation battle. So like stupidity for me, as you do, tried to play on with a ruptured plantar fascia, which was getting worse and worse. And then obviously come to the summer, I rested it. I came back in pre-season, I ruptured it again in pre-season. So I was like, wow, struggling here. So the surgeon was like, look, if you sort of do it again, you could be finished, your career could be done, sort of thing. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not in a rush to sort of leave anywhere at the minute because of the fact that, I'm recovering from an injury, what's going to take quite a few months to recover from. So obviously disappointing what Alex left, but obviously not going to blame him. An opportunity arose for him, and like anything in football, it's the industry. You've got to accept that. Obviously, Chris Hughton came in and sort of revamped the squad as well a little bit in terms of the players who came out. It was another sort of a transition period where they recruited quite smartly in terms of the players they lost and the players they brought in. But obviously I wasn't there to sort of see much of that because in the background I was always leaving, sort of thing. So it was disappointing for it to end that way and everybody to sort of disperse off to different clubs. But sometimes that's what happens in football.
Yeah, you obviously speak very fondly of your time at Blues. How will you remember it, and how does it compare to spells you had at other clubs? Obviously, you did very well at Stoke, at Norwich as well. Where does Blues rank that particular time?
It's a special place for me because obviously every club has something what means something to you. But for me, it was about, I grew up there, if that makes sense, as a young teenager growing into a young man. So I grew up there, living there on my own and having, going to a bigger city where you go into a bigger club where there's a bigger expectation. So having to sort of navigate through all those struggles as well, which was sometimes not always positive in terms of how maybe I was received or I felt I was received at times. It was a big learning curve in my career. Something like I look back at and go, you know what, you've navigated through that on the other side. You've come out of it with 2 promotions to the Premier League and a Carling Cup medal. So it's fond memories. Like I say, it's part of your journey, and I feel like at that point you've learned so much about yourself as an individual, but also as a player. You've improved as a player. So I went there a raw kid who's just had 1 year in football to somebody who evolved into something else, and I learned different aspects of my game, a different element of my game, a different side of my game, which then could give me a springboard and a platform to go and have a further my career at that level. So grateful and obviously pleased to what I contributed to my time at Birmingham.
Brilliant. And just finally, where do you keep that Carling Cup winners medal?
Good question. I should know this. To be honest with you, I'm in the middle of a renovation, so it's probably with a few other shirts and memorabilia. Or I might even bet my mum's safe. So that's probably the safest place. That my mum's, she'll cherish it and keep it forever. So no, it'll be somewhere. It'll be in the box of memorabilia. I've got a few of my mum's and a few of mine. So so it's safe. Don't worry about it. I've got it somewhere. And this is to find it.
Brilliant. Cameron, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed that, and a big keep right on.